So I've seen that Guillermo del Toro is coming out with this new movie called The Shape of Water, which seems to be about Abe Sapien falling in love, and yet in Hellboy 2 he claims that he just fell in love for the first time. That cheating little bastard.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
So clearly this review is a little bit late. It's been kind of a busy day today, and I'm out with friends right now, which is why I'm not filming in the usual room, but I decided to go ahead and take a moment to film my review for Hellboy 2: The Golden Army. This film follows Hellboy and his friends as they're working to stop Prince Nuada from reawakening the Golden Army and destroying all of mankind. Now, some of you may argue that this film doesn't really fit in with the horror genre. It may not be appropriate to some of you to review for October, and I do acknowledge that it is technically more of a fantasy action movie, but there are still several elements of horror in it, and it does have some scary moments. So first of all, I love the production value in this movie. You get a lot more of these great creative creature designs, and I was surprised at how much was done practically. Like, for example, with the character of Mr. Wink, I thought that he was completely CG, but he was actually a guy in a suit. Also, I like how there's a lot more comedy in this movie. I'd say it's right up there with Deadpool as one of the funnier comic book movies I've seen. Like, there's this fight that Hellboy gets into with one of the other heroes in the film that's pretty hilarious. And more importantly, this movie has a lot of heart in it. I mean, Hellboy, despite trying to put himself out there and, doing whatever he can for the betterment of mankind, people still see him as a freak. And then there are some scenes in this film where characters have to make some pretty tough calls for, what they consider to be the right decisions. Also, Prince Nuada was a very interesting villain. Everything that he did was completely justified in his own mind. He just sees it as completely unfair that humans have taken over the world, and he's doing what he thinks is right. I also love how they add a little more variety to the heroes by introducing this character of Dr. Kraus. It was a very well done voice acting job, which is pretty much all his character is about. He doesn't have a face, and so all of the acting comes from the body language, much like what I'm doing with my hand right now, and he was just a very charming character. But I would have to say the best part of this movie is how it feels like its own separate entity. The first film does take a lot of creative liberties, like with the presence of tentacle monsters, although I was okay with that. I'm a fan of H.P. Lovecraft. But the second movie feels like it borrows a lot less from the comics, and like Guillermo del Toro was using more of his own imagination, although it still feels like something Mike Mignola would have written. A lot of the creature designs in the movie look like something that could have been in his comic books. Now, as far as my nitpicks with this movie are concerned, I don't really care for the fact that Agent Myers was completely taken out of the story. I mean, it's not like they just pretend he never existed. There's a point where they mention that he was reassigned somewhere, but considering how important he was in the first film, I feel like it does a disservice to his character. They could have just recast him if the actor didn't want to return. They had a different guy doing the voice of Abe Sapien. This time it was actually Doug Jones, the guy wearing the costumes. So, I mean, if they're going to switch things up that much, why not go a step further? And even though, like I said, this movie can be very funny, there are some parts where the comedy doesn't really work. It just kind of falls flat, like when Hellboy hears about the Golden Army, he like turns around and says in this very serious tone of voice, "Howdy doody." It's funny because that's a show he was watching when he heard about the Golden... Oh wait, it's really not that funny. Overall, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, like I said, may not fit quite in the horror genre, but the fact that it has these crazy monsters in it, I feel makes it a good movie to watch for October, and it definitely comes highly recommended. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about this movie. I hope y'all have a good one. Bye.